We have now concluded the first round. Senator Wyden has another question that he would like to ask, and then we will wrap up, and I'll thank you all at that time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We haven't gotten into the question of the tax gap associated with this topic, and according to the IRS, the tax gap is nearly $700 billion per year, and that these provisions don't even include taxes on digital assets because the IRS doesn't have visibility into that sector. And I think you all were here when I mentioned Chuck Reddick's comments on the tax gap already. And if the digital asset rules are unclear, it seems to me taxpayers are going to resolve ambiguities in their favor if there is confusion about this. So let's just go down the row, and I would be interested in your assessment of whether I'm correct that that's what taxpayers would do, and would clarifying the rules raise revenue, and try to get each of you, our experts on this subject, get your thoughts on revenue, because I think this is a big part of the debate, and Chuck Reddick certainly lit things up earlier, and now we've got to get down to the nuts and bolts of where we go from here. Why don't we just start on the left and go down to the right?
Yeah, so thank you, Senator. I definitely think that clarifying these areas that we've talked about today is going to lead to a revenue raise, right? This is an incredibly complex topic, as we've talked about, and in a lot of cases, again, you're talking about individual users of these networks that need the guidance to be able to figure out what their tax liability is. Otherwise, they're kind of guessing at this. So.
Major amounts of revenue?
That I don't have a good sense. I'd have to...
Okay, I'm waiting for somebody who's going to define the numbers too. Ms. Kramer.
Well, starting with the estimate and the numbers, I have no clue as to what the gap might be, but nobody has a clue, primarily because the data is not available. And we don't really have a tracking of the cryptocurrency numbers the way that we do have tracking of all the other financial markets. So that's something that we could benefit from if there was more official tracking. As to, and now I forgot the last part.
No, I think I wanted to get your sense of whether it sounded right in terms of taxpayers resolving ambiguities in their favor. And then if you agree with that, what it would mean to clarify the rules.
Well,
if any of you want to make additional news today, you can lay out some potential numbers.
Obviously, if you don't have a rule that you have to follow, then you're going to interpret it in your favor. That's just the way it's done.
Thank you, Senator. I totally endorse what you said, that gamesmanship is encouraged by inadequate rules and by lack of clarification, and that's why we're here today. I think we need legal changes to help clarify that. That's an important building block for a compliant tax system. At Coinbase, we pride ourselves really on encouraging our taxpayers to comply with the laws. We have an entire module and help center to try and encourage people to do that. We've endorsed the broker reporting rules. We're building an entire framework with that will report transactions. I would just encourage, though, that each member in the Senate consider administrability in the course of doing that, because this is one asset class that is so democratized that we are talking about billions of transactions. And so what I would encourage the Senate to consider is administrability for over-reporting, for low-value reporting, and even what we call the de minimis transaction. So if you require taxpayers to report 1/4 cent of gain or loss, I just don't know that they're really chasing where the revenue really is. You should be chasing bigger transactions. Again, if you're requiring that stablecoins, all stablecoin transactions will be reported, you're going to be deluged with billions of zero-value reporting, which to me doesn't encourage the administrability of the system, encourage fairness, and it really doesn't create a system that actually works. It will creak under disrepair. The IRS is unprepared. I think the IRS is probably unprepared today to endure or to absorb the amount of information that Coinbase alone will be providing. We're going to be testing that in a little while. So again, let's create a fair system. Let's create rules for the road. We've outlined 10 points where we think we can encourage this industry to grow within the United States. So let's do that. Let's prevent brinkmanship and gamesmanship. But when we create that system, let's also create an administrable system that works.
Yeah. No idea what the tax gap figure could be, but certainly there's legitimate activity, and just like with cash, there's other things that people might be doing intentionally. Certainly, I think clear rules And anything that can be done to help get more information out, whether from the IRS to explain how all these transactions work, where they have tax obligations. They've got a lot of information out, but a lot of it's not like unique to crypto. It might just be, well, go see this publication on property in general, which might not always help answer the question. So because any resources that can help in getting more tax education out there would be good. And again, as noted earlier, I think actually just getting a legislation passed will draw attention to, oh, I need to understand better my tax considerations here. But I think good reminders to folks that if you had sale or exchange transactions, whether or not it shows up on a 1099 DA, you still have reporting obligations. I think we can learn from existing areas where people are not aware. For example, a lot of people don't know that it's income even if you don't get a 1099 or a W-2, and that just grows with more kinds of transactions that don't get reported. And there are going to be a lot of transactions that don't fall into the current reporting for centralized exchanges. So people are going to need to know, you need to keep your records, understand tax consequences, and get those reported. Then so far as people engaged in, if they're going to be bad actors, they're going to be bad actors probably with cash or with digital assets, and just ways to have enforcement funded to help address some of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.